Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Perfect Storm. Vincent Haley stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, watching the Seattle skyline shimmer in the morning light. At 38, he had built an empire from nothing. Haley Security Solutions was now the most sought-after private security firm on the West Coast. His piercing blue eyes, scarred from a childhood accident, had seen betrayal before, but never from those closest to him. The intercom buzzed. "Mr. Haley, your wife is here with Emma," his assistant announced. Vincent's expression softened at the mention of his 6-year-old daughter. Emma was his world, the one pure thing in his calculated existence. He had married Mandy Edwards 5 years ago, drawn to her seemingly innocent charm and the way she made Emma laugh. Mandy had been a struggling artist then, and Vincent had provided her with everything: a home, security, a future. "Send them in," he said, straightening his tie. Mandy entered with Emma bouncing beside her. His wife looked radiant in her designer dress, her auburn hair perfectly styled. She'd changed since their early days together, becoming more polished, more distant. "Daddy!" Emma ran to him, and Vincent scooped her up, spinning her around. "My little warrior," he whispered, kissing her forehead. "Are you ready for your beach trip with Mommy and Grandma?" "Yes. We're going to build the biggest sandcastle ever." Emma giggled. Vincent set her down and looked at Mandy. "Drive carefully." The weather report mentioned possible storms. Mandy rolled her eyes slightly. "Vincent will be fine. Mom and Dad are experienced with the coast. You worry too much." Something in her tone made Vincent pause. In his line of work, he'd learned to read people, to catch the micro-expressions that betrayed lies. There was something in Mandy's eyes he couldn't quite place, excitement mixed with guilt. "When will you be back?" he asked. "Sunday evening. Emma needs to be ready for school Monday." Mandy kissed his cheek, her lips barely grazing his skin. "Try not to work the entire weekend." After they left, Vincent couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He'd noticed changes in Mandy over the past months: secretive phone calls, new clothes she claimed were gifts from friends, late nights at her art classes that never seemed to produce any art. His phone rang. "Haley, boss, it's Darren. We've got a situation with a Morrison contract. The client is requesting additional background checks on his wife's associates." Vincent's partner, Darren McCormick, had been with him since the beginning. A former Marine with an unshakable moral compass, Darren was one of the few people Vincent trusted completely. "Handle it. I want a full workup by Monday." Vincent paused. "And Darren? Run a discreet check on Mandy's recent activities. Something feels wrong." "You sure about that, boss?" "That's crossing a line. I've built my life on reading people. She's hiding something." Vincent's voice hardened. "I need to know what." That evening, Vincent sat in his study, nursing a glass of whiskey. The house felt too quiet without Emma's laughter echoing through the halls. He designed this home as a fortress with state-of-the-art security systems and strategic sightlines. But all the security in the world couldn't protect against betrayal from within. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Your wife isn't at the beach." "She's with me. We need to talk. Meet me at Pike Place Market tomorrow, 3 p.m. Come alone. Someone who knows the truth." Vincent stared at the message, his jaw clenching. He'd been in the security business long enough to know when someone was playing games. But the fact that they knew Mandy's location meant they were serious. He forwarded the message to Darren with a single word: "Trace." 20 minutes later, Darren called back. "Burner phone, boss. Whoever sent this knows what they're doing. But I've got some preliminary information on Mandy. She's been meeting someone regularly at the Fairmont Olympic Hotel. Same person, same room, every Thursday for the past 2 months." Vincent's blood ran cold. "Name? Working on it." "But Vincent, there's something else." Emma's school called the office today. Mandy picked her up early, said it was a family emergency. The secretary thought it was strange because you weren't with her. When? 2 hours ago. Vincent's world tilted. If Mandy had taken Emma early, and she wasn't at the beach with her parents, where was his daughter? He stood abruptly, his chair clattering backward. Give me everything you can on that hotel meeting. I want names, photos, credit card records. And Darren, call on the team. This isn't just about a cheating wife anymore. Boss, what are you thinking? Vincent's voice dropped to a whisper, the tone he used when planning the most dangerous operations. I'm thinking someone just made the biggest mistake of their life. Chapter 2. The Betrayal, Unveiled. The Pike Place Market bustled with its usual Saturday afternoon crowd, but Vincent moved through it like a predator stalking prey. He'd arrived early, positioning his team strategically throughout the market. If this was a trap, he'd be ready. At exactly 3 p.m., a woman approached his table at the small cafe overlooking Elliott Bay. She was elegant, mid-30s, with intelligent eyes and an expensive handbag. Everything about her screamed money and careful planning. Mr. Haley? She sat down without invitation. I'm Gilda Davila. Vincent recognized the name immediately. Gilda was a high-end interior designer who'd worked on several of Seattle's most exclusive homes. She was also married to Judge Cameron Nelson, one of the city's most respected jurists. You sent the message, Vincent said, his voice flat. I did, because I can't stand watching what's happening to that little girl. Gilda's eyes flashed with anger. Your wife is using Emma as cover for her affair. She's been meeting my husband at the Fairmont for months. Vincent's hands remained steady on the table, but inside, rage was building like a tsunami. Your husband, Cameron, has been cheating on me for years. I've looked the other way, protected his reputation, played the perfect judge's wife. Gilda's voice cracked slightly, but when I found out he was involved with a woman who would use her own child as an alibi. Where is Emma now? That's why I called you. Mandy left Emma with a babysitter at the hotel while she and Cameron went to his cabin in the San Juan Islands. She told Emma they were going to the beach, but she's been sitting in a hotel room all day. Vincent's phone buzzed. A text from Darren. Found her. Fairmont Olympic, room 1247. I'm watching. What do you want from me? Vincent asked Gilda. I want them to pay. But more than that, I want to make sure Emma is safe. That child doesn't deserve to be caught in the middle of this. Vincent studied Gilda's face. She was telling the truth, but there was something else, something deeper, driving her actions. There's more to this story. Gilda hesitated, then opened her purse and pulled out a photograph. It showed Cameron Nelson with a much younger woman, clearly from several years ago. This is my daughter, Charity. She died in a car accident 3 years ago. Cameron was driving. The pieces fell into place. He was having an affair with her too. She was 19. I covered it up, paid off the investigators, protected him because I thought it was a one-time mistake. Tears filled Gilda's eyes. I found out later that he'd been grooming her since she was 16. My own daughter. Vincent felt the familiar cold calm descend over him. The same feeling he'd had in the military when planning elimination missions. What exactly are you proposing? I have resources. Money, connections, information. Cameron thinks he's untouchable because of his position, but I know where all the bodies are buried. Literally. Gilda leaned forward. I can help you destroy them both, but I need someone with your particular skills. And in return, I want Cameron to suffer the way my daughter suffered. I want him to lose everything. His reputation, his position, his freedom. And I want to make sure he can never hurt another child. Vincent's phone rang. Excuse me. He answered without looking at the caller ID. Haley. Vincent, it's Mandy. Her voice was bright, cheerful, completely fake. Just calling to check in. We're having such a wonderful time at the beach. Emma's been playing in the sand all day. Is she there? Let me talk to her. A pause. She's napping right now. The sun wore her out. I'll have her call you later. Mandy, what beach are you at exactly? Another pause, longer this time. The one near Mom and Dad's place. You know, the usual spot. Vincent had been to that beach many times. It was October, and the water temperature was barely 50 degrees. No one would be playing in the sand. Take care of our daughter, Mandy. She's the most important thing in the world to me. Of course, Vincent. I love you. The line went dead. Vincent looked at Gilda, his expression hardening. They just made their last mistake. He called Darren. Status report. Emma's safe. I'm watching the babysitter through the hotel's security cameras. Kid's been watching cartoons, and eating room service. But Vincent, there's something else. I did some digging on Judge Nelson. The man has a pattern. Young women, all of them ending up in accidents or disappearing. How many? At least 4 over the past 10 years. All ruled accidental or suicide. But the pattern is clear once you know what to look for. Vincent turned to Gilda. You weren't his first wife to lose a daughter. No. His first wife, Kathleen, lost her daughter in a hiking accident 7 years ago. She killed herself 6 months later. I thought it was grief, but now. Gilda's voice trailed off. Now you know better. Vincent stood. I'm going to get my daughter. Then we're going to plan the most thorough destruction of 2 people Seattle has ever seen. Vincent, wait. Gilda grabbed his arm. There's something else. Cameron has been building a case against your company, claiming you've been operating outside legal boundaries. He's been collecting evidence, planning to take you down through the courts. What kind of evidence? Photos, recordings, financial records. He's been investigating you for months, using his judicial contacts to build a federal case. Mandy's been helping him, providing information about your business dealings. Vincent's blood turned to ice. Not only had his wife betrayed him personally, but she'd been actively working to destroy everything he'd built. Where is this evidence? Cameron's home office. He keeps everything in a safe behind his law books. But Vincent, if you go there, I know the risks. Vincent's voice was deadly quiet. But they obviously don't know who they're dealing with. He turned to walk away, then paused. Gilda, I need to know, are you prepared for what's coming? Because once this starts, there's no going back. People are going to get hurt. My daughter is already dead because of him. I'm prepared for anything. Good. Because by the time I'm finished with them, they'll wish they'd never been born. Chapter 3. The Reckoning begins. Vincent's team assembled at his private warehouse facility outside Seattle. The space looked like a legitimate storage operation, but the basement contained everything he needed for the kind of work that never made it into official reports. Darren spread surveillance photos across the table. Emma's secure. I move her to the safe house with Nurse Patricia. She thinks she's on a special adventure while Mommy and Daddy work. Good. Status on the targets? Mandy and Nelson are still at the cabin. I've got eyes on them through thermal imaging. They are occupied. Darren's disgust was evident. Vincent studied the photos of the isolated cabin. Judge Cameron Nelson had chosen well. The property was accessible only by boat, surrounded by dense forest, completely private. It was also the perfect place for someone to disappear. What about the evidence against my company? Gilda was right. Nelson's been building a case for months. Federal prosecutors are involved, but they don't know about the affair. Nelson's been positioning himself as the clean judge exposing a corrupt security firm. And our legal exposure? Minimal, if we handle this right. Most of our operations have been legitimate. The few gray areas can be explained or eliminated. Vincent nodded. Phase 1. Evidence elimination. I want you to take Anthony and Lazaro to Nelson's house. Clean out that safe, but make it look like a burglary. Take enough other items to sell the story. What about the wife? Gilda's already establishing her alibi. She'll be at a charity gala tonight, visible to hundreds of people. She's also provided us with the safe combination and security codes. In Phase 2, Vincent's smile was cold. Phase 2 is where we get creative. At 2 a.m., Vincent's speedboat cut through the dark waters of the San Juan Islands. The cabin's lights were still on, casting a warm glow across the dock. He could see 2 figures moving inside, completely unaware that their world was about to collapse. Vincent tied off his boat and approached the cabin with practiced silence. Through the window, he could see Mandy and Nelson in the living room, sharing a bottle of wine and laughing. The sight of his wife's happiness in another man's arms ignited a fury he'd never felt before. His phone buzzed. A text from Darren. Package delivered. House clean. Phase 1 complete. Vincent smiled and walked up to the cabin's front door. He knocked. The laughter inside stopped abruptly. Footsteps approached the door, and he heard Nelson's voice. Who is it? Vincent Haley. I think we need to talk. The door opened, revealing Nelson in a bathrobe, his face pale with shock. Behind him, Mandy stood frozen, a wine glass trembling in her hand. Vincent, what are you doing here? Mandy's voice was high with panic. I came to collect my daughter. Imagine my surprise when I found out she wasn't at the beach with her grandparents. Vincent stepped into the cabin, his presence filling the room with menace. Instead, she's been locked in a hotel room all day while you two played house. Nelson tried to recover his composure. Now see here, Haley. I can't just what? Protect my daughter from a predator. Vincent's voice was conversational, but his eyes were deadly. Yes, Your Honor, I know all about your pattern with young women, including what you did to Gilda's daughter. The color drained from Nelson's face. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you don't. Just like you don't know about the evidence you've been collecting against my company, or the federal case you've been building. Vincent moved closer, and Nelson instinctively stepped back. Tell me, Judge, how does it feel to know that your life's work is about to be exposed? Vincent, please. Mandy set down her wine glass, her hands shaking. We can work this out. It doesn't have to be like this. Work this out. Vincent turned to his wife, his voice dropping to a whisper. You used our daughter as cover for your affair. You helped him try to destroy my company. You lied to me every day for months. He stepped closer to her. Tell me, Mandy, what part of that should I forgive? I love you, Vincent. It was a mistake. No, a mistake is forgetting to pick up milk. This was a choice. A series of choices. Vincent's voice hardened. And now you're going to live with the consequences. He pulled out his phone and showed them a video feed. Emma was sleeping peacefully in a secure room, but the location was clearly not the hotel. Where is she? Mandy lunged forward, but Vincent caught her wrist. Safe. Far safer than she's been with you. He released her, and she stumbled backward. Here's what's going to happen. Judge Nelson, your house was burglarized tonight. All your evidence against my company was stolen, along with several other valuable items. The police report has already been filed. Nelson's face went white. You can't. I can and I have. But that's just the beginning. Vincent smiled coldly. You see, I've been in the security business for a long time. I know how to make people disappear. I know how to make deaths look accidental. And I know how to make sure justice is served when the legal system fails. You're threatening us, Nelson said, trying to sound authoritative. I'm making you a promise. Vincent's voice was calm, matter of fact. You have two choices. Option 1. You both disappear tonight. Boating accident, very tragic. Your bodies will eventually wash up somewhere, and everyone will assume you were having an affair that ended in tragedy. Mandy was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. Vincent, please. Think about Emma. She needs her mother. Emma needs a mother who won't use her as a pawn in her games. Vincent's expression didn't change. Option 2. You both confess. Mandy, you'll sign over all parental rights to Emma and disappear from Seattle. Nelson, you'll resign from the bench and turn yourself in for the murders you've committed. I haven't murdered anyone. Nelson protested. 4 young women over 10 years. All of them connected to you. All of them dead under suspicious circumstances. Vincent pulled out a folder and tossed it on the table. I have proof. Photos, financial records, testimonies from people who are still alive and willing to talk. Nelson grabbed the folder, his hands shaking as he flipped through the contents. His face went ashen. Where did you get this? I have my sources. The question is, what are you going to do about it? This is blackmail, Nelson said weakly. This is justice. The kind you've been avoiding for years. Vincent checked his watch. You have until sunrise to decide. Option 1 or option 2. But either way, this ends tonight. And if we choose option 2, Mandy asked, her voice barely a whisper, then you get to live with the consequences of your choices. Nelson goes to prison, probably for life. You lose Emma forever, but you get to start over somewhere else. Vincent's smile was razor sharp. Of course, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of people you are. Your reputation, your career, your future, all of it destroyed. But you'll be alive. You're insane, Nelson said. I'm thorough. There's a difference. Vincent moved toward the door. I'll be back in 4 hours. Have an answer ready. As he reached the door, he turned back. Oh, and one more thing. If you try to run, if you try to call for help, if you do anything other than sit here and think about your choices, well, let's just say that option one becomes the only option. He left them in the cabin, their faces white with terror and the weight of their choices. Chapter 4. The Trap Springs. Vincent returned to the cabin at exactly 6 a.m., just as the first rays of sunlight painted the sky pink. The boat was still tied to the dock, and he could see movement inside the cabin. They had stayed, which meant they were taking him seriously. He found them sitting at the kitchen table, looking like they hadn't slept. Empty coffee cups and the remnants of the evidence file were scattered between them. Mandy's eyes were red from crying, and Nelson looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. Decision time, Vincent said, taking a seat across from them. We choose option 2, Mandy said quickly. We'll confess. We'll do whatever you want. Just please don't hurt us. And you, Your Honor. Nelson's voice was barely a whisper. I'll resign. I'll confess to the accidents. But I want immunity from prosecution. Vincent laughed, a sound devoid of humor. You're hardly in a position to negotiate terms. Then what guarantee do I have that you won't kill us anyway? You don't. Vincent's honesty was brutal, but I give you my word that if you follow through completely, you'll live. Whether that life is worth living depends on how thoroughly you confess. He pulled out a digital recorder and placed it on the table. Start talking. Everything. The affairs, the murders, the evidence collection against my company. Leave nothing out. For the next 2 hours, Vincent recorded their confessions. Mandy admitted to the affair, to using Emma as cover, to helping Nelson gather information about Vincent's business. Her voice broke as she described the extent of her betrayal. Nelson's confession was even more damning. He detailed not 4, but 7 young women he had killed over the years, each one made to look like an accident or suicide. He described how he'd used his position as a judge to cover up evidence, to misdirect investigations, to ensure that no one would ever suspect him. The evidence against Vincent's company, Nelson continued, his voice flat with defeat. It was all fabricated. We were planning to destroy his business, then disappear together with the money from selling his assets. And Emma. Vincent's voice was dangerously quiet. She was gonna have an accident too. After we got control of your assets. Nelson couldn't meet Vincent's eyes. Make it look like she drowned while you were distracted by the legal troubles. Vincent's control snapped. He lunged across the table, grabbing Nelson by the throat. You were going to kill my daughter? Vincent, stop. Mandy screamed, but her voice seemed to come from very far away. Vincent's hands tightened around Nelson's neck, watching the man's face turn purple. It would be so easy to finish it now, to squeeze until the life left his eyes. But he had a better plan. He released Nelson, who collapsed back in his chair, gasping for air. You just sealed your fate, Judge. Both of you. Vincent picked up the recorder and checked the recording. Hours of confessions, including the plan to murder Emma. More than enough to destroy them both. Here's what's going to happen, he said, his voice calm again. Nelson, you're going to call a press conference tomorrow. You're going to announce your resignation and publicly confess to the murders. You're going to turn yourself into the FBI. And if I don't, then I release this recording to every news outlet in the country, along with the evidence of your crimes. But before I do that, I make sure you have a very painful accident. Something that takes a long time. Vincent, please, Mandy started. You're going to sign the parental rights papers that are waiting at my lawyer's office. You're going to leave Seattle today and never come back. You're going to tell Emma that you're going away for work and won't be coming home. I can't do that to her. She's my daughter too. You stopped being her mother the moment you decided to have her killed. Vincent's voice was ice cold. You have no rights here. No say in what happens. You're going to disappear, and if you ever try to contact Emma or come back to Seattle, I'll make sure you join your boyfriend in whatever hell he ends up in. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the peaceful morning water. You know what the real irony is? If you had just asked for a divorce, I would have given you everything you wanted. Money, freedom, even shared custody of Emma. All you had to do was be honest. Vincent, but you chose to betray me. You chose to use my daughter as a pawn. You chose to try to destroy everything I built. He turned back to them, his expression carved from stone. You chose to threaten my child's life. Those choices have consequences. His phone buzzed. A text from Darren. Media contacts ready. FBI expects Nelson surrender by noon. Lawyer has papers ready for signature. Time's up, Vincent said. Darren will escort you both back to Seattle. Nelson, you have 2 hours to get your affairs in order before the press conference. Mandy, you have 1 hour to pack and say goodbye to Emma. 1 hour? That's not enough time. It's more than you deserve. Vincent's finality was absolute. You'll tell her you're going away for work. You'll tell her you love her. And then you'll disappear from her life forever. What about money? How am I supposed to live? That's not my problem. You should have thought about that before you decided to play games with my family. As they prepared to leave, Nelson made one last desperate attempt. Vincent, you don't understand. There are people involved in this bigger than me. People who won't let this end here. What people? Federal prosecutors, other judges, politicians. The case against your company was just the beginning. They want to take down the entire private security industry, and you're the biggest target. Vincent studied Nelson's face, looking for signs of deception. You're lying? I'm not. Check the evidence for my safe. There are files on dozens of security firms, all being investigated. You stop them, he won't stop them. Then I'll deal with them too. Vincent's voice was absolute certainty. I've been underestimated before. It never ends well for the people who make that mistake. As they left the cabin, Vincent remained behind for a moment, looking out at the water. He thought about Emma, sleeping safely in his protection. She would grow up knowing that her father would never let anyone hurt her, that he would move heaven and earth to keep her safe. But she would also grow up knowing that there were consequences for betrayal, that some lines could never be crossed. It was a hard lesson, but it was the truth of the world they lived in. Vincent pulled out his phone and called Darren. Phase 3 is in motion, but we have a bigger problem. There are more players in this game than we realized. How do you want to handle it? The same way we handle everything. Thoroughly. Vincent's smile was predatory. But first, I need to see my daughter. I need to remind myself why I'm doing this. Boss, about Emma. How are you going to explain what happened to her mother? Vincent was quiet for a long moment. I'll tell her the truth. That sometimes people make choices that hurt the people they love. That actions have consequences. That her mother chose to leave, but her father will never abandon her. She's 6 years old, Vincent. That's a lot for a kid to understand. She's my daughter. She's stronger than people think. Vincent's voice softened slightly. And she'll never have to worry about being betrayed by someone who's supposed to love her. I'll make sure of that. Chapter 5. The Web Unravels. 3 days later, Vincent sat in his office watching the news coverage of Judge Cameron Nelson's dramatic confession and arrest. The story had exploded across every major network. A respected federal judge admitting to 7 murders, detailing a conspiracy to frame private security firms, and revealing a web of corruption that reached into the highest levels of the justice system. Emma was at school, blissfully unaware of the storm surrounding her family. Vincent had told her that mommy had to go away for work, that it might be a very long time before she came back. Emma had cried, but children were resilient. She'd adapted to the new routine with Nurse Patricia, who had become her live-in caretaker. Boss, we have a problem, Darren said, entering the office with a grim expression. The FBI wants to talk to you. They're downstairs. Expected. What's the nature of the visit? They say it's about the Nelson case, but I think it's more than that. The lead agent is someone named Gail Huang, and she's been investigating private security firms for the past year. Vincent straightened his tie. Send them up. And Darren? Record everything. Agent Huang was a petite woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She entered with 2 other agents, all of them wearing the standard FBI uniform of dark suits and serious expressions. Mr. Haley, I'm Agent Huang. We need to discuss your relationship with Judge Nelson and your wife's recent disappearance. My wife left me, Vincent said simply. She's an adult. She can go wherever she wants. Without her daughter? Without any contact for 3 days? That seems unusual for a mother. You'd have to ask her about her motivations. I can only tell you what I know. Agent Huang opened a file. We found evidence in Judge Nelson's home safe that suggests he was building a case against your company. Evidence that was stolen during a burglary the same night he was arrested. Convenient timing, Vincent said, but I fail to see how that involves me. Where were you 3 nights ago, Mr. Haley? At home with my daughter. We watched movies and ate pizza. I can provide receipts if you'd like. We'll need to verify that alibi. Of course, Darren can provide you with our home security footage. I'm sure you'll find it illuminating. Agent Huang studied Vincent's face, looking for cracks in his composure. Mr. Haley, Judge Nelson has made some very serious accusations about your business practices. He claims you've been operating outside legal boundaries for years. Judge Nelson also confessed to 7 murders and a conspiracy to frame innocent businesses. I'm not sure I consider him a reliable source. Nevertheless, we'll need to conduct a thorough investigation of your company's activities. Vincent smiled. I welcome the investigation. We have nothing to hide. What the FBI agents didn't know was that Vincent had spent the past 3 days scrubbing every trace of questionable activity from his company's records. Years of careful documentation had been sanitized, backups had been created showing only legitimate operations, and several former employees had been relocated with generous severance packages and non-disclosure agreements. Agent Huang, Vincent said, leaning back in his chair, I'm curious about something. How long have you been investigating private security firms? That's not relevant, too. I think it is. You see, Nelson mentioned that there were other people involved in this conspiracy. People who wanted to take down the entire industry. Vincent's voice was casual, conversational. I'm wondering if you're one of those people. Agent Huang's expression hardened. Mr. Haley, I'd be careful about making accusations you can't support. Who said I was making accusations? I'm just asking questions. Vincent pulled out a file from his desk. Like why you've been meeting with federal prosecutor Eduardo Herrera for the past 6 months. Why you've been coordinating investigations of 17 different security firms. Why you've been building cases based on fabricated evidence. The color drained from Agent Huang's face. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you don't. Just like Nelson didn't know what he was talking about. Vincent opened the file and spread photographs across his desk. These are surveillance photos of your meetings with Herrera. Dates, times, locations. All documented. One of the other agents stepped forward. Agent Huang, what is he talking about? It's nothing. He's fishing, trying to deflect attention from his own crimes. What crimes? Vincent asked. The ones Nelson fabricated? The ones you helped him fabricate. He pulled out another photograph. This is you leaving Nelson's house 2 weeks ago. The same house where he kept his fabricated evidence against my company. Agent Huang was silent, but Vincent could see the wheels turning in her head. She was calculating, trying to figure out how much he knew and how much he could prove. Here's what I think happened, Vincent continued. You and Herrera decided that private security firms were a threat to federal law enforcement. Too much competition, too much independence. So you decided to take us down systematically, starting with the biggest firms. That's preposterous. Is it? Nelson was the perfect inside man. A respected judge who could provide legitimacy to your fabricated cases. But Nelson had his own agenda, his own perversions. Things got messy, and now you're scrambling to cover your tracks. Vincent stood up and walked to the window. The problem is, Agent Huang, you picked the wrong target. You see, I've been playing this game a lot longer than you have. I know how to gather intelligence, how to turn people, how to expose corruption. He turned back to face them. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to call off the investigation into my company. You're going to focus on the real crimes, the ones Nelson committed. And you're going to hope that I don't decide to release the evidence I have about your conspiracy. You're threatening a federal agent. I'm offering you a choice. The same choice I offered Nelson. Vincent's smile was cold. You can walk away now, clean up your mess, and pretend this never happened. Or you can keep pushing, and I'll make sure the world knows exactly what kind of agent you are. Agent Huang looked at her colleagues, then back at Vincent. This isn't over, Mr. Haley. Yes, it is. Vincent's voice was final. You just don't know it yet. After the agents left, Darren shook his head in amazement. Boss, how did you know about Huang and Herrera? I didn't, but I've learned that when someone is trying to destroy you, they're usually not working alone. I had our people dig into everyone connected to Nelson's case. The conspiracy was bigger than we thought. What now? Now we make sure they understand the consequences of coming after my family. Vincent's expression hardened. They wanted to destroy everything I built. They wanted to take Emma away from me. They need to learn that some people don't forgive and they don't forget. What's the plan? Phase 4. We're going to systematically destroy everyone involved in this conspiracy. But first, I need to make sure Emma is completely safe. This is about to get very ugly. Chapter 6. The Hunter Becomes the Hunted. 2 weeks after the FBI's visit, Vincent received an encrypted message that changed everything. The sender was anonymous, but the content was clear. They're coming for Emma. Tonight. Get her out of Seattle now. Vincent's blood ran cold. He immediately called Darren. Emergency protocol. Emma needs to be moved to the Montana facility immediately. Boss, what's happening? Someone's making a move on Emma. I'm not taking any chances. Within an hour, Emma was on a private jet to Vincent's most secure facility, a ranch in rural Montana that officially didn't exist. She thought she was going on a special vacation with Nurse Patricia, excited about seeing horses and mountains. Vincent remained in Seattle, setting a trap. If someone was coming for his daughter, they would find him instead. At 2 a.m., Vincent's home security system detected movement. 3 figures approached the house, moving with military precision. Vincent watched them from his secure room, noting their equipment and tactics. These weren't street criminals, they were professionals. The intruders bypassed his outer security with ease, but Vincent had expected that. He deliberately left certain vulnerabilities in place, creating a path that would lead them exactly where he wanted them. As they entered the house, Vincent activated the lockdown protocol. Steel shutters slammed down over every window and door. The house became a fortress, but this time, the intruders were trapped inside with him. Welcome to my home. Vincent's voice echoed through the house's intercom system. I hope you're comfortable, because you're going to be here for a while. The intruders froze, realizing they'd walked into a trap. Vincent could see them through the hidden cameras, their faces covered, but their body language revealing their panic. You came here for my daughter, Vincent continued, his voice calm and conversational. That was a mistake. A fatal one. One of the intruders tried to shoot out a camera, but the bulletproof housing deflected the shot. Vincent laughed. Gentlemen, let me explain your situation. This house is completely sealed. The air filtration system is under my control. The temperature is under my control. And I have enough supplies to wait as long as necessary. He paused, letting that sink in. But you don't. You have maybe 6 hours of air left, and that's if you don't panic and start breathing heavily. Vincent activated another system, and knockout gas began seeping into the house's ventilation system. The intruders would be unconscious within minutes. Sweet dreams, gentlemen. When you wake up, we're going to have a very interesting conversation. The 3 men woke up strapped to chairs in Vincent's basement. The room looked like a professional interrogation facility, which it was. Vincent had used it many times over the years for extracting information from hostile parties. Good morning, Vincent said, sitting across from them. I trust you slept well. The men were professionals, but Vincent could see the fear in their eyes. They'd been captured, and they knew their situation was hopeless. Let's start with introductions. I'm Vincent Haley, and you broke into my home to kidnap my daughter. He pulled out a set of tools, laying them carefully on a table. Now, who sent you? The men remained silent. Vincent had expected that. I admire loyalty, I really do. But you see, gentlemen, I have a daughter to protect, and I will do absolutely anything to keep her safe. He picked up a pair of pliers. Anything. 20 minutes later, Vincent had his answers. The men worked for federal prosecutor Eduardo Herrera, who had decided that Vincent was too dangerous to be allowed to operate freely. The plan was to kidnap Emma and use her as leverage to force Vincent to confess to crimes he hadn't committed. Where's Herrera now? Vincent asked. Safe house, in Portland. One of the men gasped. But you'll never get to him. He's got too much protection. We'll see about that. Vincent stood up, his interrogation complete. Now, gentlemen, you have a choice to make. You can work for me, or you can disappear. Permanently. Work for you how? You're going to help me take down Herrera and his entire operation. In exchange, you get to live and start over somewhere far away from here. The men looked at each other, then nodded. They'd seen what Vincent was capable of. They knew their only chance of survival was cooperation. Good. Here's what we're going to do. Chapter 7. The prosecutor's fall. Federal prosecutor Eduardo Herrera sat in his Portland safe house, confident in his security arrangements. He had 12 armed guards, state-of-the-art surveillance equipment, and the full backing of the Justice Department. Vincent Haley might be dangerous, but he was just one man. He was wrong. At 3 a.m., Herrera's security chief received a call from one of his men. "Sir, we have a problem. 3 of our assets have gone dark. No contact for 8 hours. What's their last known location?" "Seattle. They were supposed to retrieve the Haley girl." Herrera's blood ran cold. If Vincent had captured his men, it meant the operation was compromised. Double the security, and give me a line to Agent Huang. We need to accelerate our timeline. But Agent Huang wasn't answering her phone. Neither were any of the other conspirators. One by one, Herrera's network was going silent. "Sir," his security chief said, "we're picking up movement on the perimeter. Multiple contacts approaching from all sides." Herrera looked at the monitors, but they showed nothing. "Are you sure?" "Thermal imaging shows at least 20 heat signatures surrounding the building. They're professionals, sir. Military-grade equipment." "That's impossible. Haley doesn't have that kind of resources." The security chief was about to respond when every light in the building went out. Emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in red light. "We're under attack," the security chief said into his radio. "All units, defensive positions." But there was no response from the perimeter guards. They were already gone. Vincent's voice came through the building's intercom system. "Mr. Herrera, this is Vincent Haley. I believe you have something that belongs to me." "I don't know what you're talking about," Herrera said, though his voice shook. "You sent men to kidnap my daughter. That was a mistake. Now you're going to pay for it. You're surrounded by federal agents. You can't possibly. Look outside, Mr. Herrera. Tell me what you see." Herrera moved to the window and looked out. The grounds were littered with unconscious bodies. His entire security team had been neutralized without a single shot being fired. "How is this possible?" he whispered. "I told you I was thorough. Did you really think I'd come here alone?" Vincent's voice was calm, almost conversational. "I have resources you can't imagine. People who owe me favors. People who believe in justice. What do you want?" "I want you to confess. Everything. The conspiracy against private security firms, the fabricated evidence, the plan to murder my daughter. All of it. I'll never." The building shook as explosions rocked the foundation. Not enough to cause structural damage, but enough to make Herrera's remaining guards panic. "That was just a demonstration," Vincent said. "I could bring this building down around your ears if I wanted to, but I prefer a more personal approach." The doors to Herrera's office burst open. Vincent entered with 2 of his men, moving with military precision. Herrera's remaining bodyguards raised their weapons, but Vincent's team was faster. Within seconds, the guards were unconscious on the floor. "Mr. Herrera," Vincent said, taking a seat across from the prosecutor. "Let's have a chat. You can't do this. I'm a federal prosecutor. This is kidnapping, assault. This is justice. Something you seem to have forgotten about." Vincent pulled out a digital recorder. "Now start talking. Tell me about the conspiracy. I want a lawyer." "You're not under arrest, Mr. Herrera. You're not entitled to a lawyer. You're entitled to whatever mercy I decide to show you." Vincent's smile was cold. "And right now, I'm not feeling very merciful." Over the next hour, Vincent extracted a full confession from Herrera. The prosecutor detailed a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of the Justice Department, a systematic plan to destroy private security firms and consolidate power in federal agencies. "How many people are involved?" Vincent asked. "Dozens. Judges, prosecutors, FBI agents, even some politicians. We've been planning this for years." "Names?" "I want all of them." Herrera provided a list of over 30 names, each one a part of the conspiracy. Vincent recorded everything, building a case that would destroy the entire network. "What about Agent Huang?" She's already dead," Herrera said quietly. Vincent's expression didn't change. "Explain." "She was going to expose the conspiracy. She grew a conscience after Nelson's arrest. We couldn't let that happen. You killed a federal agent. It was necessary. She was going to ruin everything." Vincent stood up, his confession complete. "Mr. Herrera, You've just admitted to conspiracy, murder, and treason. In a just world, you'd spend the rest of your life in prison. But this isn't a just world, is it? Herrera said bitterly. No, it's not. Which is why I'm going to make sure you never hurt anyone again. Vincent pulled out his phone and played a recording. It was Herrera's voice, but the words were different. I can't live with what I've done. The conspiracy, the murders, the innocent people we've destroyed. I'm sorry. What is that? Your suicide note. Amazing what technology can do these days. I can create a perfect recording of your voice, saying anything I want. Herrera's face went white. You're going to kill me. I'm going to give you the same choice I gave Nelson. You can confess publicly, expose the entire conspiracy, and spend the rest of your life in prison. Or you can have a tragic accident. And if I confess, then you get to live in a maximum security cell, surrounded by people who don't like corrupt prosecutors. But you'll be alive. Herrera looked at the recorder, then at Vincent's implacable expression. I'll confess. Good. Because if you don't, not only will you die, but I'll make sure everyone you care about suffers the same fate. Your wife, your children, your grandchildren. The conspiracy ends with you, one way or another. You're a monster. I'm a father protecting his daughter. There's a difference. Chapter 8. The Reckoning. 6 months later, Vincent sat in his office reading the morning news. The headlines told the story of the greatest corruption scandal in Justice Department history. 37 federal officials had been arrested, including judges, prosecutors, and FBI agents. The conspiracy to destroy private security firms had been exposed in its entirety. Federal prosecutor Eduardo Herrera had confessed to everything before taking his own life in his jail cell. His suicide note, which perfectly matched his voice patterns, detailed the entire conspiracy and named every participant. Judge Cameron Nelson had been found dead in his cell as well, apparently killed by other inmates who didn't appreciate child killers. The official investigation called it a prison riot, but Vincent knew better. He made sure Nelson's crimes were well known among the prison population. Agent Gail Huang had been found dead in her apartment, ruled a suicide by investigators who didn't look too closely at the evidence. Her confession, found on her computer, had provided crucial evidence for the prosecution of the other conspirators. Emma was back in Seattle, attending a new private school and thriving under the care of Nurse Patricia. She asked about her mother sometimes, but less frequently as time went on. Children adapted. They moved on. Vincent had told her that Mommy had made some bad choices and had to go away. It was the truth, simplified for a child's understanding. Someday, when Emma was older, he would tell her the whole story. But not yet. Boss, Darren said, entering the office. We've got a situation. Mandy's been spotted in San Francisco. She's trying to contact Emma through the school. Vincent's expression hardened. What kind of contact? She's been calling, claiming to be Emma's aunt. She wants to take Emma for the weekend. The school didn't fall for it, but she's persistent. Where is she now? Hotel near the airport. She's using a fake name, but our facial recognition software picked her up. Vincent was quiet for a long moment. He'd hoped Mandy would have the sense to stay away, to start a new life somewhere far from Emma. But apparently, she hadn't learned from her mistakes. What do you want me to do? Darren asked. Nothing yet. I want to talk to her first. Maybe she can still be reasoned with. Boss, she tried to have Emma killed. She doesn't deserve. She doesn't deserve mercy now. But Emma deserves to have this settled once and for all. Vincent stood up, set up a meeting, somewhere public, lots of witnesses. I want to give her one last chance to do the right thing. Vincent met Mandy at a coffee shop in downtown San Francisco. She looked different, thinner, older, with hollow eyes and cheap clothes. The wealthy lifestyle she'd enjoyed as his wife was clearly a memory. Vincent, she said, standing up as he approached. Thank you for coming. Sit down, Mandy. We need to talk. She looked nervous, constantly glancing around the coffee shop. I know what you're thinking, but I've changed. I've learned from my mistakes. Have you? Because attempting to contact Emma through false pretenses suggests otherwise. She's my daughter too. I have rights. Vincent's voice was dangerously quiet. You signed away your rights. You agreed to disappear from her life forever, and you tried to have her killed. I never agreed to that. He was sick. He manipulated me. You were recorded confessing to the plot. You knew exactly what you were doing. Mandy's facade cracked. I was scared. I thought if I didn't go along with it, he'd kill me too. So you chose to sacrifice your daughter instead. I thought maybe I could find a way to save her. Maybe if I played along, I could find a way to get her out safely. Vincent studied her face, looking for signs of deception. What he saw was desperation, self-delusion, and a complete lack of understanding of the consequences of her actions. Mandy, do you know what happened to Cameron? I heard he died in prison. Suicide. He was murdered by inmates who knew what he'd done to children. It was slow, painful, and well-deserved. Mandy's face went white. You arranged that. I arranged for justice. Just like I arranged for Herrera's death, and Agent Huang's, and all the others who threatened my family. You're a monster. I'm a father who protects his daughter. Something you never understood. Vincent leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave San Francisco today. You're going to disappear completely. And if you ever try to contact Emma again, if you ever even think about her, I'll make sure you join Cameron in whatever hell he's burning in. You can't keep me from my daughter forever. I can and I will, because you're not her mother anymore. You're just a woman who gave birth to her. A mother protects her child. A mother doesn't plot to have her murdered for money. Mandy started crying. I know I made mistakes, but I love her. I want to make it right. You can't make it right. Some things can't be undone. Some betrayals can't be forgiven. Vincent's voice was absolute. You had a choice, Mandy. You chose wrong. Now you have to live with the consequences. What if I promise to stay away? What if I just watch from a distance? Just to know she's okay. Then you'd be lying, because you're here now, trying to take her away from the safe, stable life I've built for her. You're selfish, Mandy. You always have been. Vincent stood up. This is your final warning. Disappear. Start a new life. Find some way to live with what you've done. But stay away from Emma. Because if you don't, I'll make sure you regret it for the rest of your very short life. As he walked away, Mandy called after him. She'll ask about me someday. She'll want to know why I left. Vincent paused at the door. I'll tell her the truth. That you chose someone else over her. That you were willing to let her die for money. That you were never worthy of being her mother. That's not fair. Life isn't fair, Mandy, but it is just. And justice has been served. Chapter 9. The Price of Betrayal. 1 year later, Vincent received a package with no return address. Inside was a newspaper clipping and a handwritten note. The clipping was an obituary. Mandy Edwards, 32, died in a car accident in Phoenix, Arizona. She survived by no immediate family. The note was simple. She kept trying to contact Emma. She wouldn't stop. This seemed like the best solution. A friend. Vincent burned the note and threw away the clipping. He felt no satisfaction, no closure. Mandy's death was simply the final consequence of choices she'd made long ago. Emma was now 7 years old, thriving in school and surrounded by people who genuinely cared about her. She rarely asked about her mother anymore, and when she did, Vincent gave her simple, honest answers. Mommy had made bad choices and had to go away. It was sad, but sometimes that's what happened. Vincent had made sure Emma was surrounded by positive female role models. Nurse Patricia was like a grandmother to her, and Vincent had hired a young teacher named Sylvia Schmidt to help with Emma's education. Sylvia was kind, patient, and completely devoted to Emma's well-being. Daddy, Emma said one evening as Vincent tucked her into bed, do you think Mommy ever thinks about me? Vincent considered his answer carefully. I think she probably does. But sometimes, Emma, people make choices that hurt the people they love. And sometimes those choices can't be undone. Did she choose to leave us? Yes, she did. But that doesn't mean it was the right choice. And it doesn't mean you did anything wrong. Emma nodded solemnly. I'm glad you didn't leave me. I will never leave you, Emma. No matter what happens, no matter what choices other people make, I will always be here for you. Promise. I promise. And I always keep my promises. As Emma drifted off to sleep, Vincent reflected on the past year. He destroyed everyone who had threatened his family, eliminated every trace of the conspiracy against his company, and built an even more secure life for Emma. She would grow up safe, loved, and protected. But more than that, she would grow up knowing that actions have consequences. That betrayal has a price. That some people can be trusted completely, and others can't be trusted at all. Vincent's phone buzzed with a text from Darren. Boss, we have a new client. High-profile executive whose business partner is embezzling funds. Wants a complete elimination of the problem. Vincent smiled as he typed back, handle it. Use the Montana team. And make sure it's thorough. Some people never learned. They thought they could cheat, steal, and betray without consequences. Vincent had built his reputation on proving them wrong. He walked to his study and poured himself a glass of whiskey. On his desk was a photo of Emma from her school play, dressed as a princess and beaming with joy. Next to it was a smaller photo of the three men who had tried to kidnap her, their faces frozen in terror moments before they disappeared forever. Vincent raised his glass in a toast to the photo of Emma. To my daughter, may she never know the price of betrayal, because she'll never need to pay it. As he drank, Vincent thought about the lessons Emma would learn as she grew up. She would learn that her father was a man who kept his word, who protected those he loved, and who never forgave those who betrayed him. She would learn that the world was full of people who would try to hurt her, but that she had someone who would always stand between her and danger. Most importantly, she would learn that love wasn't just about emotion. It was about action. It was about doing whatever was necessary to protect the people who mattered most. Vincent finished his whiskey and locked the photo away. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats, new people who thought they could take advantage of others without consequences. But tonight, Emma was safe in her bed, and that was all that mattered. The price of betrayal, Vincent had learned, was everything, and he would make sure that anyone who threatened his family paid that price in full. Outside, the Seattle skyline glittered in the darkness, a city full of people who thought they understood how the world worked. But very few of them understood the most important lesson of all. Some men forgive, some men forget, and some men do neither. Vincent Haley was the latter kind of man, and anyone who crossed him learned that lesson far too late. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen, and I'll see you there.